Join me today with Tania from the Sexual Assault Center. It's going to be a tough talk. Get your coffee. We'll be right back.
Hi, may I please have an application? Thank you.
Skip the drama. Get your diploma.
Okay.
Take that first step towards a better future. Find free adult education classes at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back to GHC Coffee Break. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and it's something that we don't like to talk about, but joining me today is Tania, and she is from the Sexual Assault Center, Northwest
Georgia.
Sexual Assault Center. I know that April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so I invited you to come and kind of help our listeners know what you do, but also prevention and how can we prevent something that is so traumatic for people.
Right. Well, as you said, I'm from the Sexual Assault Center of Northwest Georgia, and our center provides outreach services as well as forensic medical exams to victims of sexual assault, child molestation, any type of sexual violence. We also provide counseling and court accompaniment. If their case goes to court, we can provide some support for them. And so that's primarily what our role is. We serve 5 counties, so Floyd, Bartow, Chattooga, Polk, and Gordon. So we have a large service area.
And that is pretty big. Wow. So the other counties, I'm assuming each county has at least some kind of connection to a sexual assault center, right?
Each county, well, each of those 5 counties are connected to our sexual assault center.
But what about like if you lived in Haralson County or?
There are very few centers in Georgia. There's only about 23 of us, I think. So some of the rural counties, particularly in like Southwest Georgia, do not have a sexual assault center. A lot of those counties don't even have a hospital in those counties, so you have to drive to another county. So just because they're a very rural area, so there isn't really representation for every single county in Georgia. So we're very fortunate here in Northwest Georgia to have the Sexual Assault Center and be able to provide the services we do.
Yeah, because even looking at the 5 counties, I didn't think that each county necessarily had a specific, a center, but like, if someone was attacked, because Georgia Highlands serves Polk, Paulding,
Right.
Cobb County, Haralson County, Carroll County. I mean, we have a pretty diverse area that we cover as far as Georgia Highlands College. But if someone was at Paulding or Haralson County and they were attacked, of course, I'm not talking about the police part, but I'm talking about getting the help part, the advocacy.
There are centers that serve those counties.
Okay, I guess that's more what I was getting at. Is does each county have at least a center that kind of serves their area, even if it's this big?
Yeah, and if you go to RAINN website, it's RAINN.org. You can put in your county and locate the center nearest you.
Okay, that's good to know. Say that again.
It's RAINN.org. RAINN.org.
Okay, what does it stand for, or is it an acronym?
It is an acronym. It is an acronym, and right now I can't remember what it stands for.
Okay, you can jump in if we remember. But I worked in volunteered and then had a brief time at Fulton County at Grady, so you can imagine. But that's been 20 years ago, and a lot has changed in the laws. So let's talk a little bit about how you were talking about a victim advocacy law that has come up now. I think that's really important for people to know because people are scared to talk about it.
Right. People are afraid to talk about it. They're afraid to report for various reasons. We know that about only 60% of rapes or 30% of rapes are reported, so we know that there's a lot of rapes out there or sexual assaults that's not being reported. And so part of those issues are, they're afraid of other people finding out. They're afraid of, it being in the newspaper. They're afraid of, the perpetrator retaliating. They're afraid of what people will think of them, because we have a lot of victim blaming that goes on in our society. So they're afraid of these different things. And so it prevents them from coming out and reporting these assaults. One of the things that has come up in recent years is the advocate privilege law. It's kind of like a confidentiality law. So, that we can be advocates are protected from having to go to court and divulge whatever the victim tells us. Now that can be overridden by a judge and they can require that, but that is a law that has been put in place in order to protect the confidentiality of our victims.
Which is really, I was very excited to hear about that. Like I said, it's been 20 years since I've been in the field in that area. And when I was there as an advocate, but the defense attorney actually decided that he didn't like. I think it really was a manipulation to scare the victim, and said that I may want to call her, so she needs to leave the courtroom. And at that time, we didn't have that kind of protection. I had to leave the courtroom. Now, I did later find out there were some things I could have probably done because I wasn't there the night that she was brought in. I wasn't her counselor. So when you told me that was really exciting to know that protects, because volunteers and advocates want to do it, but then they want to make sure that they're protected as well.
Right.
Because this guy was sitting over there doing, kind of this whole thing during the preliminary hearing, and she was just shaking. And, that kind of behavior. And I reported it to our DA, and he put a stop to it, him and the judge. So I'm so glad to hear that one, because people want to help, but they don't. Right. They're afraid.
And we're fortunate to be able to have a good working relationship with the DAs that serve our counties. And a lot of times, we can talk to them and help them understand why it's important for us to be there as that support system. When we do go to court, we don't speak up, as far as, tell our side of the story or anything like that. Our main thing is to be there for that client and to be there for that victim who is facing her attacker. That can be a traumatic experience in itself, because she's having to relive, the trauma and everything that she experienced the day of her assault, and so it can be very anxiety producing for them. And so it's very important to have somebody there to kind of just talk to them and help them take their mind off what's going on in a way, and just really be that calming force.
Yeah, I think that's really important. I'm glad some things have changed. And when I look over, since the 1980s and 90s, when I was doing a little bit with the Sexual Assault Center in Atlanta, to know that a lot of laws had changed. A lot of things have changed to help victims not be as victimized, I guess, after they have already been sexually assaulted. And I think that's something we need to also talk about, is it's not necessarily about the sexual assault act as much as is a control. Because a lot of people go, well, you hear the blaming victim. She was dressed this way. But I'm sorry, when a man attacks a grandmother and beats her and rapes her, that is not.
No. It's about power and control and being able to assert your will over another person, and the adrenaline or the high or however that makes that perpetrator feel. It's kind of like a drug, and so it's about power and control, not about sex at all, and stuff. And that's what we need to do, the conversation that we need to have, with people to change their way of thinking, because a lot of times we go out into the community and we do these events and we ask, these questions. We do a lot of myth and facts, and that's one of those, if a girl is dressed in skimpy clothing, then she was asking to be assaulted. And you'd be shockingly surprised at how many people are like, well, that's a fact. And we're like, no, it's not, so trying to have those conversations and put that message out there that it doesn't matter what you're wearing, it doesn't matter what you're doing, that sexual assault is a crime, bottom line, and you don't blame the victim, that it is that perpetrator's is responsibility for their own behavior. And, you know, if you are a victim of a burglary or you're a victim of a, you know, if you're a murder victim, we don't say, well, that victim deserved to die because they were, you know, it was their fault.
They were walking
exactly
downtown at midnight or whatever.
Exactly. You know, and so we don't blame the victim in those cases, but they're just the same types. I mean, they're crime just like everything else. You know, like sexual assault is a crime, burglary is a crime, murder is a crime. You know, and so, but we look at it differently just because of the way we're socialized.
So,
in some ways.
exactly, the socialization, and it's always been, for various reasons, I guess, socially, a taboo subject. Even though we were more open to talk about with our kids about sex and what it means in relationships, I still think we're not really preparing them and preventing them from being assaulted. Like you said, I believe let's talk a little bit about statistics wise in this area. Who are the victims?
Well, in just the last year, I'll just share with you some 2015 statistics. Our center served 367 victims. And then we did 153 forensic medical exams, and those are the exams where we collect evidence to aid law enforcement in investigation and hopefully further down the road prosecution. 61 of those victims last year were children under the age of 12.
When you shared that with me before we got started this morning, my jaw wanted to kind of drop because, again, going back to kids and this power and control issue, 11, 10, 9, 8-year-old girls are not sexual beings even. And so for them to sit there and people to blame the victim, I do think they're less likely maybe to blame a child than an adult or an older adolescent. But still, the trauma for a child to have to explain what has happened, and a lot of times I was reading a book and she actually wrote about what happened to her, and she grew up being sexually assaulted by a neighbor who was a good friend of the family, that she thought that was what was love.
Right.
You know, he tricked her into and kind of romanced her, for lack of a better word, and luring her in so that she didn't even know to report, I've been sexually assaulted.
And that's what we see with a lot of our child victims, is what we call grooming. And, you know, they do little things like, I'm going to give you some candy, and then, you know, I'm going to touch your shoulder. And then it proceeds from there to they create this familiarity with the child. And then when it progresses to, you know, child molestation or to something sexual, by the time that happens in the child's mind, that it's okay. And, you know, when it really isn't. And then, you know, children don't come forward as quickly as adults do, because they're, you know, a lot of times the perpetrator shames them and says, you know.
Well, and threatens
them, you know, if you tell anybody, I'm going to hurt your mommy or something like that. And so we see that a lot, you know. So a lot of times our child victims, you know, it may be months or even years down the road before they disclose to anybody.
Yeah, and again, I think it goes back to that idea of the grooming. The perpetrator is, you know, he wants that control. He wants that power over this child or this person, and children are more susceptible in that way. So how do we, you know, we're fixing to have to go to a break, but we can talk about that a little bit on the prevention side when we come back. How do we help our kids, you know that this is not right? I mean, when my kids were growing up, we said, if anybody touches the places that your bathing suit covers, you know, because 6, 7-year-old, you don't want to explain other stuff, but you do want to explain, hey, this is the things that your bathing suit covers. No one, I don't care if it's mama, daddy, brother, aunt, uncle, you know, neighbor, the preacher, whatever. If anyone touches you in these 2 places, you come tell an adult. But I still don't know that we're really getting the message out to our kids, because we're still a society that, if we talk about sex, they're going to do it. No, they're not. They're more informed. So get your coffee and we'll be right back.
My college offers classes that meet my educational and career goals.
with opportunities outside of the classroom.
Where the faculty know me by name.
My college can prepare me for my career.
I can earn an associate's degree and transfer credits to a bachelor's.
My college is a state college within the university system of Georgia.
My college offers courses that fit my schedule.
It's where excellence begins.
We are.
We are.
We are.
We are GHC, Georgia Highlands College.
We're back with Tania from the Northwest Georgia Sexual Assault Center. I know this is not a topic that we like to really talk about, but I think that's part of the reason why we want to talk about it is April is Sexual Assault Awareness. Mm-hmm. It is happening to our children. It is happening to our adults, but it's not just women. I think we need, before we really talk about the prevention, I think we also need to mention males and young males, adults and children males can be victims as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. We see the statistic is like 1 in 33 males.
And that's reported.
That's reported. That's what's reported, yes. And, you know, males are actually less likely to report because most of the time a male is assaulted by another male, you know, in most of the cases that we see. And so, you know, they're less likely to report it because of, you know, the different stigmas that are attached to that. And then, you know, various other reasons they don't report that.
Yeah, and I mean, that's, again, it's that control. Mm-hmm. And I guess I watch too much Criminal Minds because but I think, you know, the shows actually like that do a very good job of researching and explaining how a perpetrator, it is a control issue. But one of the most traumatic ones, I can't even watch that one, was a little boy and a brother and sister that were kidnapped by a child molester. They weren't after the little girl. They were after the brother. And I watched it one time because I didn't know what was, you know, the story. But it made me, at that time, my grandson and granddaughter were probably 12 and 9. And I was like, that could be my grandkids. And so let's really talk about how do we inform and how do we let our kids know, how do we keep them safe? How do we keep ourselves safe?
Well, there's no like definitive answer. There are preventative steps that we can take. You know, just like any other crime, you can't completely 100% avoid it. But there are ways to make yourself less vulnerable. You know, things we see about perpetrators, things that we know about their behavior is they're going to look for a victim that is more vulnerable, that's, you know, an easier target. So there are ways to make yourself not that easy target. As an adult, you know, things that you can do is simple things like when you go out, don't be so engrossed in your phone. I know
it is
a very big one, you know, and the digital age that we are in, you know, you see people walking across parking lots and they're texting and they are not paying attention to their surroundings. So that is one of the biggest things. When I go out and I talk to college students particularly, that's one of my biggest tips is you have to pay attention to what you're doing. You have to pay attention to who's around you. You have to pay attention to, you know, the person that's in the car next to you because you don't know if they're not going to jump out of the car and open the trunk and shove you in it, you know. Mm-hmm. Those are things that we don't know. And I hate that it's a day and age where we kind of have to be a little paranoid.
Yeah.
You know.
But it's not paranoid if they're really out to get you.
Right. But you don't know. You don't know that person next to you is not a perpetrator. You don't, you know, they may and they may not be. So the best thing to do is just to be aware. You know, keep your eyes up and you're facing forward. You know, things like check the back seat of your car. You know, make sure somebody hasn't climbed in the back seat of your car and you know, you get down the road and you know, they force you to pull over or something, you know, so it's those safety issues that just, you know, keep us safe as people. And then things like for the college students out there, if you're, you know, out, you know, at a party or you're out at, you know, wherever you go, you're at a restaurant or something like that, you know, if you order a drink, make sure you watch them fix it. Make sure that you are the one that went and got that drink, you know. So things like that, you know, and remember that things like date rape drugs, Rohypnol, GHB, ketamine, those are things that can easily be slipped into any drink. So it's not even if you're drinking alcohol, they can be slipped into a tea glass or a water bottle or something like that. So those are things that, you want to make sure that if you get a drink somewhere, that you open your own drink so that you know that it was sealed beforehand. So those are things, that we can do as adults to kind of keep ourselves safe.
Well, I want to just real quick before you go to the next one, getting back to the texting, because another one that really makes me nervous. I walk on it's called the Green Belt in Carrollton, and it's a really not you walk or run or a bike or scooter, no motorized vehicles, but I watch these people, and I'm still bad to be. I can get self-engrossed or and not pay attention like I should. But they have their headphones on. And my daughter runs like that. When she's out by herself, even on a green belt, because there's some secluded areas, it scares me because she doesn't hear if somebody comes up behind her. And so I'm a little disturbed because you see a lot of people walking and running now. They're trying to get healthy. Great, wonderful. But they're so oblivious, even if they're not texting, if they've got that little iPad or whatever, iPod in their pocket, in their headphones, they're not hearing and aware of what's going on. They're listening to their music. That really bothered me this weekend because as I'm starting to walk more, I really noticed it.
Right. And I totally understand, because if I'd go do something like that, I want to listen to music. Kind of helps you, for long. My suggestion would be at least leave, only use one earbud and leave one of the other ones out. And still be aware of your surroundings, aware of the people that are around you. It doesn't take, just a second to kind of turn your head and see if there's somebody behind you or kind of scan the view of things and see, make sure what's going on around you. Other suggestion was, take a self-defense class.
Yeah.
That's one of the things we will offer later this month as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. We do have a self-defense class that we're offering. And so those are things that you can do to prevent yourself, from being less likely to be a victim.
Well, what about for our viewing audiences that have children or grandkids?
Okay, children are, I think prevention that way is really creating that open conversation between you and that child, and having that conversation of that child knows that they can come to you for anything and not be shamed or put down or made to feel guilty. I think a lot of reasons, that's the reasons children don't open up as much, because, they in somewhere in there, they know what happened is wrong, but they can't really identify those feelings yet because they just haven't developed to that level yet.
Yeah, they just know it didn't feel right.
Right. And they don't know how to verbalize that a lot of times. And so I think having that open conversation, I think for the Darkness to Light curriculum.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, I have gone through that training, and it's a training that really talks about ways to keep your children safe, ways to, spot potentially sexual abuse in a child, and how to have that open conversation with your child about it. And so that's a very good training. I know they do offer it online. You can probably Google it, and it's I think when I took it, it was $10 for the training online. And I hear that we're going to have the training somewhere offered in the community, so that might be something that you can kind of look out for. But it was a very good training. It's very geared to parents and caregivers and people who deal daily with children, and how to handle those disclosures if a child does disclose to you, what to do next, and how to appropriately react to that, and not be exactly, and not to make them feel like they shouldn't have told you.
Right. And I think, unfortunately, and I hate to say this, but again, I think it's a matter of awareness. A lot of time, most people kind of think of the monster jumping out behind in the darkness, when the reality is acquaintances.
It's the people that's closest to you.
Teachers, and you don't want to think
relatives,
that. Coaches.
So
we've got to be aware of those things, and like you said, you don't want to be paranoid, and you don't want to the kids can't go over to the coach's house because whatever.
But you need to look for certain signs, things that they kind of are red flags, if, they're too familiar with the child. Yeah, I mean, those are things that this training covers with, things that you can kind of take out and listen to. That's why it's important to talk to your children.
Yeah, that's the number one.
That is the number one thing, is if you are not having a conversation with your child about what is going on in their life, then you're not going to know. And so that's one of the things that I do with my children is every week. Well, what'd you do here, and how'd you do this, and do you like this person, and going over the things that make them feel uncomfortable, and talking about places that shouldn't be touched by other people, and talking about private parts, and that those are your parts, and that you are the only person that should be touching them, and if anybody makes you feel uncomfortable. That's what I'm saying, having that open conversation and having that child trust you enough to come to you if something does happen, and being able to appropriately react to it.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a very good, and then with teenagers, I think it's really, not only we're talking about the victim, how to protect her. We need to be also educating perpetrators to help them not become perpetrators. Right. That you don't have to have control. That there's some way, we've got to help them too, not to do the things they're doing.
Yeah.
And
when you're talking about teenagers, one of the things that our prevention team does is they do a curriculum called Safe Dates. And we have been very fortunate to get into most of the county high schools and the city high school. We do it as with their ninth through their freshman health class, and we talk about things like setting boundaries. When you do engage in a dating relationship, what are you okay with? Holding hands? Are you okay with kissing? And being able to have that conversation up front. Setting boundaries. When it becomes sexual assault, when she says no, that means no. Period. Period. So, and then like red flags in dating. Teen dating violence is a huge thing these days as well. And showing them what these red flags are and how it escalates, maybe from texting constantly to it may escalate to physical violence. So those are things we are doing.
And unfortunately, we're almost out of time. We'll be right back. Get your coffee.
The average text takes your eyes off the road for nearly 5 seconds.
Welcome back to GHC Coffee Break. Tania, thank you for joining us for Sexual Assault Awareness Month in April. Real quick, give us what's listed coming up.
Okay, so our awareness events this month on April 8th, which is this Friday, we're having our Jeans for Justice Walk. We have done this annually for the last few years. And it starts at noon at the City Hall in downtown Rome on Broad Street. And so you can come join us. Registration's $5. It includes a t-shirt. And then on April 16th, we have Row Down the River that Berry College is sponsoring. And so there's they're going to go down the river and you bring your own canoes, that kind of thing. Cool. And so the registration is $25. It starts at Grizzard Park, and you can register by visiting gogorunning.com. And then on April 21st is our annual Speak Out. We call it Take Back the Night. We'll have a special speaker, and it is at the First Baptist Church courtyard. And then the last thing we'll want to talk about is April 30th is our self-defense class at the Rome Athletic Club. And you can register. It's limited to 30 registrants. It is free, but you have to register in order to be able to come. And you can look at our Facebook page, Sexual Assault Center of Northwest Georgia.
All right. Until next time, GHC Coffee Break.